Hey folks, welcome to the Market Internal Review for August 28th, 2023. So today we opened up with a rather large gap, a little over $2 at 227. Started real hot on tick, lots of extreme closures. The tick delta is up at 1,300 stocks, uptick to start the morning. We've got a bright hot add band vold, dim a little bit, but still on the bullish side. First thing I noticed was the trend balance indication with those yellow dots. A few of you have asked in the comments and other areas what the dots mean, so I just want to be abundantly clear that the description on TradingView does include a breakdown for you, but just to really drive it home, make sure everyone is aware of what these mean. When you see the yellow dots, it means that the New York Stock Exchange, the market, as I'll often refer, will be in a balance. So you should expect a bing bong, an oscillation, maybe a chop kind of movement within areas where you see these yellow dots. Where you see the green crosses, that is a extreme bullish. If it's green closure, that means the candle on tick actually closed up here. So that's a massive push in upticks for that particular period. So 2-minute chart, this 2-minute candle. If you see the yellow dots and you see some highs on tick like this, then you should expect some lows on tick to basically balance this out. That's typically how I will read it. It's difficult to time this yellow dot. The balance can be a much more difficult trading environment. When you see white dots, which we only had here towards the end of the day, that typically will indicate the potential for a trending move, or I like to call it price discovery. And when I see a strong day of price discovery, I think last week we had some of that on Friday, that's when you'll typically start to see a trending move in one direction, whether that be up or down. Is usually I use the add and vold to help assess directional bias when it comes to a trending indication here. I will use a monthly TWAP levels as potential longer trending targets. If I think that the price for the day is mostly going to be smaller, then I'll just use previous session TWAP price targets. If those are already far below or above where price currently is, and I don't think we're going to move towards those, then I'll just use the standard deviation bands on TWAP itself, these ones here, and I'll just target those. It all just kind of depends. That's why I use this system in complete here, as you see, to guide my assessment and my positioning, my risk, just everything. It is very nuanced, but once you do it, it's not that difficult. When you see no dots, that can be good and bad. It depends again on these bands here. Depends on where price is in relation to TWAP, previous TWAP price targets, gaps, you name it. But that typically just means that it could be that we're moving from balance to imbalance. It could mean that we're moving from imbalance to balance. So if we've made a huge move and all of a sudden the dots disappear, they were white, it could mean that there's going to be a reversal setup. You'll actually see that here. So we had that today. After we opened up, we had these extreme tick closures. We failed to make any higher highs. There's something here. I'll show you. If you were on Twitter, you saw it, but we had multiple rejections up here today, and it really just kind of shows you how tick itself, we were just in a decline the whole morning session there for that first 30 minutes, maybe even that first hour. When we finally show a balance again, that's roughly where the price starts to oscillate on the trend. We see these downward red arrows and then back to green up arrows, back to red down. That's just indicating that the trend for the New York price advancement and decline fighting to find a direction. And you could see it in the SPY's price action here. There was really fantastic alignment today. Looking at Mercy, we can see that the overall trend is up per the market. We have lower divergence here, and that's roughly where we started to advance back up towards this particular area that we kept rejecting. If you saw my charts today, you'll already know what this was, but believe it or not, this was a monthly gap. So between the last changeover, I believe I've got this set to 2. So let me just see. Oh, okay. So that was June to July month gap. June to July month gap. We finally retraced back up to that, and that's right where we stopped every dang time today, all the way to the end of the day. Quite incredible. It's why I love this indicator. It's how I caught a handful of shorts today. You can also see that we had the midpoint of the daily gap. That's roughly right where most of the longs would have worked today, especially closer to those key times, the 12:30, the 1:30. So very nice. So we have this balance. What do we do with it? We look at the overall tick and price and volume here. Best way to do this is to look for extreme lows per tick and trade in the direction of the price and the volume for the New York Stock Exchange. So right now it's bullish. So every time we see a low tick, that's where we can get our scalps. Now this one here, not as extreme as this last one. So this is definitely a little bit of an outlier. We actually did have a divergence where New York Exchange is not making a low to match or even a lower low, but SPY is. So a little bit of a precursor there. And we kind of chop right above previous day high. We do retrace back to first standard deviation low on the TWAP, but then we have that hard rejection back down to daily gap mid. And we just continue to oscillate through here. It's really nasty price action towards that lunch hour session. And it's indicative in MIT here in that we don't really have any tick to either side. We only have a couple pops here and there, but nothing really sustained, no trend. This is why we see these yellow dots. There's just absolutely nothing here. Then we hit that 12:30 time, one of my favorite times, right along with 1:30. Where's 1:30 at? Here's 1:30. I preach these times all the time in the channel because they really do present quite a lot of opportunities week over week if you're patient enough to just wait for those. So here's first opportunity, mid gap. We reclaim previous high a day after breaking below a couple times. We just made an extreme tick low. Even the RSI is showing us that we had a little retracement below the midpoint. We reclaim early here. Tick's not looking very extreme, but we do have a tick average closures starting to cross that midpoint. Look at the ad band. It's starting to brighten up. Vold, the volume for the market, has never went bearish all day, and mostly that trend. Look at that trend. It's mostly bullish all day up to this point. We started to see the uptrend on both indicators here, depending on which one you like to use. And we get a first deviation reclaim right over this TWAP level. And I believe I covered this in Friday's video. We get that. We get this hard knife. Well, I shouldn't say hard knife, but we get this nice down. This was a nice hard move here. Very fast. Very little bull candles in between this dump down here. And then we park ourselves right down in this range for the rest of the morning. Then we get this in move that I was pointing out in Friday's video, where we kind of zigzag. Okay, right here. And here's your TWAP low. First standard deviation low. You get in somewhere right around here. You can set your stop loss slightly below TWAP. And just look for a mean reversion. We've got the trend balance to support that thesis. We've got so much confluence here for the bullish side. We're seeing a nice engulf candle. Tick is backing us up. Low divergence with the market. At this particular point, we did have a slight pop, but still overall pretty low divergence compared to some other times we've seen. And boy, I mean, they send it all the way even to the monthly gap midpoint. Even if you just went for TWAP, that's still a 3-to-1 trade. If you get all the way to upper deviation TWAP, that's a 7-to-1 trade. Mid of the monthly gap, that's an 8 to almost a 9-to-1 trade. So just a fantastic scalp opportunity right there. And it is only $1.14, but if you know what you're looking for, this opportunity was awesome. And this one paid out. I definitely took advantage of that one. And I mean, look at this. It just rips. There is zero hesitation in price, no selling to push us back down. Didn't even get a TWAP retest, just right on through. We did also have a reversal. So trend balance. We did have a small moment here where we had nothing, and then we see trend balance again. And look what happens. Look what we get. We get that nice move. Boom. Same thing. We get that in shape right here and right down. And look at the times. 12:30, 1:30. It's crazy. It's crazy how much this setup appears, but it definitely does. The rest of the day, what did we see? I'm going to turn these gaps off. You know already, you can tell. You can pause from earlier in the video. You can see that we definitely were oscillating around that. So no need to continue to show that. So one thing to note, we did not test the 0-day market. Either leg was untested. We mostly oscillated and held last Friday, the end of last week's price. So that to me is bullish. We continue to hold previous day's high. So that means the market has accepted that price, at least in the short term. We did close slightly higher from the open price, about 57 cents. Not a huge day, by no means for SPY. From the gap, we finished up almost $3. So that's pretty good. So here's trend. Trend showing us that balance area most of the session. I think we spent 75% of our time in a balance, and this 200 moving period average, simple average here, is on the decline, heading towards that strong buying, potentially overbought. But the real story here, I think, is with VOLD. So the New York Stock Exchange market, the volume today was mostly concentrated in advancement. We had a small dip right around here, but from 2:30 on, I mean, we just really hammered it. If I turn on the extended trading hours, you can see the last 4 minutes of right after the regular session close, we printed a couple more really insane candles up to the highs. So if we look at the price, so advancing versus decline, we mostly held advancement, extreme buy advancement, up until that 2 o'clock time. That's really where we started to see. I mean, we saw some weakness from 10:30 down here to that 12:30 time. Then we get that pump on SPY, and then we get that dump from 1:30 on. So that's where we see all this struggle showing up. But we're still in advancement. We closed almost 1,400 in advancement by the end of the day. I do think we had a couple. Yeah, these are mainly flat candles there in the last little 4 minutes of extended data that we get, at least on TradingView anyways. And VIX, after a small gap up, we gave all that up and we closed lower than we did in Friday's session. So we're right on that 15 line. So I'm gonna cautiously suggest that we may have a couple scenarios playing out. We may have a scenario where we do gap up tomorrow. Now we may give it up in the pre-market session, but I am considering the fact that we may gap up. If we do gap up, my best bet is that they're going to gap it roughly right around the monthly TWAP. We did this once before with NVIDIA. Now monthly TWAP was a whole dollar, almost a whole dollar higher back then before we drug it down more. But you see how we gapped right on the monthly TWAP. We reject to previous day's high. We try to run it back over, and then that's where we have that hard knife. I'm not sure that we'll see that hard knife sell again, but if we do, I'm going to say that it's probably going to be pretty nasty. I would be surprised if we break below 438, which would be the monthly first standard deviation low point on the TWAP here. But I mean, I'm very optimistic that we're going to close somewhere in this range by the end of August. I think we've got about 4 days left. So my guess is we're going to open up somewhere around here. And then depending on what happens, we could come and test previous day's range. This would be the high. And then maybe we'll shoot up somewhere around here, test this. This is just pure price action candle levels from the monthly time frame. See if we test a 446. That would be kind of my first guess as to what could happen. Otherwise, if we chop around perhaps, and then we come back and test this gap, maybe fill this all the way. And then from there, who knows? But I would expect this to defend this 438 if we're going to remain mostly neutral, potentially somewhat bullish into the end of August. I mean, if they give all this back up, then and all hell breaks loose, well, then we could fill Friday's range, we could fill today's range and go much lower. I'll tell you why I don't think that's going to happen, and that's partly because I'm seeing a lot of the sectors, a lot of the spiders starting to curl up on the RSI. I do see a little bit of the average trading range come down some, but one thing that I really like to see is that we actually secured the 10-day average price on SPY, and we already bounced this weekly trend. That's giving me some hope. We still have the 50 and the 20. They're almost the same price. We have that to contend with. That's at 445 price, which does kind of align with the monthly TWAP. It's a little bit higher than that. I mean, from back when we rejected it the first time, it's actually almost dead on that 445 area. Another thing is looking at the S&P 500 stocks above the 5-day average. We're sitting at 80%. So that shouldn't really be a surprise considering that we're seeing the 10-day, 5 days probably going to be even faster, obviously. So seeing this at sitting at 80% now, of course, every time we head up here, that obviously will start to read more like an RSI, and maybe we'll see some pullback. But we're early days in here. You can see a lot of times it's sitting up in here for multiple days. This is a daily time frame. 20-day, we're only just now starting to curl up. We're sitting at 32% of the S&P 500 is sitting above their 20-day. 200-day, I believe we're still sitting around 50. Yeah, we did tick it up about 4%. 50-day, we're still real low. So we've got the 50-day and we've got the 20-day sitting real low. 5-day, we've retraced over for 80% of the stocks. So now it just comes down to, can we sustain that and continue? Growth stocks specifically are sitting at about almost, we're headed towards that 50% of the S&P growth stocks heading above their 20. So 20 is typically the one that I like to look for to see a trend. So when you look at the SPY chart, every time we hit that 20 area, that's roughly about where we bounce, and that selling discontinues. So it was seeing this 20 here on August 2nd was like, oh crap. And we tried to break back above that on the 4th, and that's basically when all hell broke loose. And we just, I mean, even here on August 10th, look at that wick almost right on the 20. So the 20, there's a reason these internals exist, and they provide a measurement of the 20, the 50, the 200, and the 5. It's because these are common tools that are utilized, I believe, by the market. So the whole market's looking at these. Heading back into what I'm expecting, just to summarize, like I said, I am expecting a little bit of a gap. Don't know if it'll be sustained through pre-market. That sure would be nice. But all the markets basically today had similar days. You can see Qs, they oscillated inside of their daily gap. Dow was looking pretty strong, but all of them basically halting right at that high from the morning session. The Russell, they did have a slightly more downtrend, but they still sustained above their open price. So if we look at the open price here, there's their gap, 79 cents up from the gap low, $1.63. So it's a pretty good day. And they actually closed above previous day high session, Friday's price, and they held their daily gap. So this is very good. Very, very good potential for anybody that voted in the poll that we're not going to make any new lows. That will be a true statement by the end of this month. So heading into tomorrow, definitely be conservative. Looking at the morning session, let's wait for price to pick a direction. But I'm even somewhat optimistic that maybe Tuesday will show a little bit of a trend. But we'll have to wait and see, obviously, for intraday data. Other than that, we'll turn the tick levels on just real fast. This is basically just going to show the balance price. We even had two bullish tick levels and two bearish tick levels, both at the highs and lows respectively. And you can see we basically oscillated right around that. So no real shock there. Hope you had a great trading day. Tomorrow I will be pretty light on Twitter. I don't even know that I'll be able to trade too much. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'll do my best to respond in a timely manner. And thank you for watching. And as always, happy trading.